Hi everybody, my name is Uzo from Uzo's Food Labs and I am in the garden and I am going to be putting together my compost bin. Now, I garden organically, which essentially means I don't use any chemical fertilizers or chemical pesticides in the garden. And that's my personal choice because we eat a lot of what comes out of the garden. So I want to be sure of what was actually used to grow everything before I feed my family. And growing organically is pretty easy and you'll be very surprised at how easy it is to fertilize your own plants at home. So I'm going to be showing you how to make your own compost bin and then just talk through some of the things that you can also use to fertilize your plants at home without resorting to chemicals. Very easy, and you will sleep easy knowing that everybody is eating good stuff. So let's get to it. My bins here. Now, your compost bin can be any size. We live in an urban jungle, so you may not have enough space to have a super large tub, or you might have. So feel free to use any size of container that you want that makes for the space that you have. Don't use anything fanciful, don't buy anything expensive. You can just use upcycled containers. Maggie bucket here. You can use a flower pot in any size, and I've seen one of the projects that I'm working with is with a school. They actually use those huge water tanks as their own compost bins, but the bottom line is just make sure that you have a container to put everything in. Contents of your compost bin. So I've mentioned before in a previous video that I am extremely squeamish, so I don't really do wet compost. I try to stick with dry ingredients that will break down over time. So in this case, I've got grass clippings and weeds, things like that, and sometimes I don't generate enough of this from the leaves that surround my house that fall. So what I do is the neighborhood gardener who goes around clipping other people's lawns and trimming their hedges, I just ask him to give me all of his waste. So grass clippings are a good base, leaves and things like that. I've got some wood shavings here. I go to sawmills that are around me and I just ask them for their wood shavings. And again, it saves them the trip of getting rid of that stuff, so I get the bagfuls for free rather than them having to pay money to get rid of the stuff. So sawdust, wood clippings, paper is really good, and this is just like the pack for calcium tablets that I also use in the garden, and I explain to you what they are as well. Just tear them into little pieces. Newspaper, the newsprint, the carbon that's used in the newsprint actually helps with your compost as well. And then you need to also start saving your eggshells. Eggshells are an important part of every compost bin and every organic gardener's garden because they add calcium to your plants, which helps of course when you're dealing with fruiting and things like that. Now, you may not generate enough eggshells in your home, so feel free to ask those vendors that are by the side of the roads that tend to make breakfasts of noodles and eggs. They'll be more than happy to give you their eggshells because they don't have to look for where to throw the shells away. But make sure that you rinse them very thoroughly, and then once you've rinsed them, put them out to dry under the sun. Once they're dry, go ahead and add them to your compost bin. Now, you can add potato peels, carrot peels, banana peels. I like dry compost. I don't like things that will get ooey and smelly. So dry compost works for me. But you can also go ahead and do whatever it is you want. Now, when you are composting, sometimes if you're adding certain elements, your compost can start to smell. So sprinkle a little bit of baking soda on your compost pile and it will help manage the smell. Now in here as well, I already have, in a previous episode I talked about using crushed palm kernel shells for mulch. So just add that as well. It takes longer to break down, but again, very good for your plants and a great way to fertilize. And so the compost will break down after a couple of weeks and you can just add that to your plants when you're planting new seeds, or you can use it to feed your plants. Now, another thing I want to show you is how to make your own compost tea. So after you have put your materials for your compost in your bin, and the compost begins to break down, you can add some water into your compost bin, leave it for about a week, and then after that you will have this black liquid that typically shouldn't have any smell, and it's tea for your plants. And so what I do is I will drain the water and the compost tea into little bottles, and then the compost that's left that's wet you can still add to your plants, and then use this to feed your plants once every week or once every fortnight, and it just gives your plants an extra boost. Now another thing that is important in the garden, which everybody should have on hand just because, are calcium tablets. Now calcium, human beings take these tablets, and these don't cost a lot of money at all, and it helps with osteoporosis, which is essentially strengthening of the bones. I always have a stash of calcium tablets at home for use in the garden, because certain plant afflictions like blossom end rot, which is when your tomatoes or your peppers are developing a dark spot under the plants, is sometimes caused by calcium deficiency in the soil, so they'll need a quick hit. So what I do is I simply sprinkle some tablets of calcium all over the surface of the soil and water it. The plants will absorb this almost immediately, and it should reverse the problem. This is common with tomatoes, peppers, and things in the nightshade family, including eggplant as well. So this is 200 tablets, and it costs next to nothing. So every gardener should have these at home. And this really is my stash of things that I use to fertilize as organically as possible. You can also look into Epsom salts, which people use to take their baths, but it adds magnesium to your soil. But typically with regular feeding, with compost tea and compost, most plants will do fantastically well, and you don't need to add any chemicals to it, so that you know that whatever you harvest, 100% natural. So I would love to hear from you. If you've got any other suggestions, what have you tried? What have you heard about? If you want to ask my opinion about certain things that you've read, feel free to leave comments down below. Subscribe to the channel so that you can constantly get new updates. And also follow us on social media, Uzo's Food Labs. Now, it's time for me to head in because I have to switch into mommy mode now. But until the next time that I come your way again.